okay? So, the only thing that's missing here is my irrigation. Yeah. Okay. So let's just pause for a second because I'll describe this first. So, Chrissy, up to you whether you want to record. Okay. The first thing we have to do is we have to clean this. Okay. And in order to clean this, right, we have to be mindful of how we're going to approach the cleaning. Okay. So there are different cleansing agents, but let's talk about the concept of debridement. Okay. So within all wounds, on that wound bed, bacteria begins to really propagate on that wound bed within a matter of 12 hours, okay? So between 12 and 24 hours, we immediately have what's called a biofilm, okay? Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. Okay, that biofilm is good or bad bacteria?
Good.
Okay, so I had different answers. So the biofilm that forms on a wound bed is good or bad bacteria? Raise your hand if you think it's bad. Okay, raise your hand if you think it's good. Raise your hand if you think it's so-so. Okay, so I need a delegate from each group. So who said it was good? Okay, Genevieve, you want to describe it?
I mean, I just made the connection because I have a fish tank and back
So
good biofilm.
That's an interesting connection. I did a lot of aquaculture myself, and she's right about that. Yeah, but biofilm can get bad. Yeah, biofilm can get bad, Genevieve. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, on the good side. Why is it bad? I need a bad delegate. Raise your hand, bad people. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Elena, let's give someone else. Elena, why is it bad bacteria?
My reasoning was that, I guess good bacteria wouldn't proliferate that much. Like
Okay.
bad bacteria would if there's plenty of things to eat.
Okay. Anyone in between? I think Tatiana, you're the only one in between.
So first it's good and then it's progressing to come back.
So, in general, biofilm is always a negative thing, okay? As it relates to wounds, as you begin to proliferate that cellular growth, that's an abnormal growth. It's no longer what we would tend to have or normally find as normal bacteria on the skin, okay? Or what we would call normal flora, okay? So the normal flora on the skin, which we have multiple different, bacterial agents as well as potential agents that actively live on the skin, Staph aureus being one that's very common, okay? So as that biofilm begins to proliferate and increase, it's a bad thing, okay? So our goal first and foremost is to get the biofilm out, okay? You're gonna hear synonymous terms. Biofilm really describes the film and this layer that's forming. That is the same thing as a bioburden, okay? Those are synonymous terms. Biofilm is physically the layer. That biofilm is a bioburden. You guys with me? Okay. So the first thing we have to do is we irrigate the wound bed. So if I was to de-dress this wound, take everything out, my first step is irrigate. Everybody with me? Okay. First step, irrigation. There are some principles with irrigation, and I'm going to tell you what you'll find at the bedside and in most clinical settings. So if you're in a wound care clinic, you're going to have some really good tools that not a lot of other settings would have. If you're at the bedside in a hospital, 9 out of 10 times what you can have is, if you're at a Cedars, you're gonna have an irrigation spray bottle, and it's probably an active solution that's going to help reduce that biofilm, okay? If you're at a Valley Press, you're gonna be using saline, okay? Just keep it real. You guys get the difference, right? Mm-hmm. Rich money, no money, okay? Y'all with me? Okay. The goal with irrigation is your PSI, okay? The goal with irrigation is your PSI. Does everybody know what PSI is? No. Pounds per square inch, okay? Right? Okay, with PSI, it's speaking to pressure, right? But PSI is pounds per square inch, and that describes the force of pressure, okay? So with PSI, we have to get within an optimal zone, okay? So an optimal zone for removing that biofilm is 8 to 10 millimeters of mercury. Now, I don't expect you to remember that. Millimeters of mercury, 8 to 10 psi. I don't expect you to remember that, but I'm going to tell you why that's important. Because with your normal 10 ml syringe of normal saline, we need to know how much psi we can get, even if I went like this, or even if I went like this, okay? So in a 10 ml syringe, the highest psi I can receive, whether I forcefully push it, whether I squirt it, 5 psi. Everybody just hear that? 5 psi in a 10 ml syringe. So if I take a 10 ml syringe, which is 90% of what I see at the bedside, is that properly irrigating the wound? No, it's not, okay? If I go up in size to a 30, I can get up to 8. If I go up in size to a 60, I can get between 10 to 12, okay? So if you're going to irrigate with a syringe, you need a larger volume, okay? Now, if you're at the Cedars or the UCLA's, right, and you have a wound cleanser in a bottle, when you turn that bottle to spray or to irrigate, what do you think that PSI was designed at?
10.
8 to 10. Spot on, Genevieve, 8 to 10, okay? Now, the key with irrigation is understanding this principle. If you're below 8, okay, what are you doing?
You're not removing anything.
Come on, explain it. You're not removing, right? So you're basically not allowing the pressure to remove or irrigate the bioburden, okay? So you're pretty much undervaluing your treatment, okay? If you're above 10, and now typically our danger range is 12 and above, okay? If you're above 12, what are you doing?
Taking the
Okay, hang on, I'm gonna hear some different things, which is what I always expect. So what'd you say?
I said tissue injury.
Okay, Ruth,
You're taking off good tissue.
anyone else?
You're hurting them.
Okay, so too much pressure. I'm definitely damaging tissue, but what else am I also doing? I'm taking that biofilm and I'm what?
Spreading
I'm
it.
pushing it into healthy tissue, okay? So I'm further worsening the potential issue of infection, okay? So I may actually be causing infection with too much pressure. So, what I'm gonna tell you again, I don't expect you to remember 8 to 10. I would love for you to do so, but if you don't, just remember a 10 ml syringe, which you're gonna see 9 out of 10 times, it's not really doing anything. You're just adding some saline to the wound bed, okay? If you have a wound cleanser, you're getting what you need in a spray bottle, okay? If you wanna irrigate properly with a syringe, gotta go up in volume. Everybody good with irrigation? Next step is debridement, okay? Next step is debridement. We separate debridement into 2 separate buckets, selective and non-selective. Where do you guys want to start, selective or non-selective? Okay, start in this bucket. Selective debridement, first and foremost, the very first phase of the wound healing process is going to begin with who?
The doctor.
Hang on, think about what I asked you. The very first phase of wound healing is going to begin with who?
Oh, the
That a girl, Genevieve. You, the patient, okay? So the body, through whether you believe in a creator or whatever, the body's natural scientific modalities, right, allows us to naturally debride. What do we call that? What do, that, come on, you're there. Nicole, you're there. Autolysis or autolytic debridement. Good job, Nicole, okay? Step 1, selective debridement, autolytic debridement. That's us. That's the natural body moving through the 4 phases of wound healing, okay? Everybody with me? The body is a very, very efficient machine, okay? But it's not always efficient because of things like this, right? So autolytic debridement, step 1. Next, we're still in the selective category, okay? Someone take a guess. Good job, Nicole. Enzymatic debridement. In the United States, still in 2023, there is one. You should never forget this drug because there's only one in this country, okay? There's only one enzymatic FDA-approved debriding agent that we use in wound care. Has anyone seen it? Okay, it's a gel that comes in a tube about this big, okay? The generic name is the enzyme. It's collagenase. Collagenase, okay? The brand name is Santyl, S-A-N-T-Y-L. The generic is the enzyme, it's collagenase. The brand is Santyl, okay? There's only one, you should always remember that. It comes out just like, it looks like, almost like a yellowish clear Vaseline, okay? You apply it to the wound bed in nickel thickness. Your focus is the slough or the eschar, okay? The unique thing about collagenase is it's selective. It only targets what?
Necrotic tissue.
Good job. So the way collagenase works on a cellular level is I have necrotic tissue adhered to healthy tissue. The collagenase enzyme cleaves the connection between dead tissue and healthy tissue, and then it debrides, okay? Takes a while, It's a pretty good product. Not the biggest fan. I think it's overused, which sure, let's use it. But I mean, I haven't seen like great results with it, right? But it can work, okay? That's collagenase. It's selective. So even if I put it in a wound bed, would it hurt the granular tissue? No. Still in the selective bucket. Any other selective debriding options? That a girl, okay? And what do we call that grouping?
Is it bio?
Good job. So I have biotherapies or I have biodebriding options, okay? So outside of maggots, Ruth, don't answer. Renzel, I'm gonna turn to you. What other potential biotherapy might I use? It's been used for centuries. Think in the forest and the jungles. Think to the Philippines, maybe. Yep, or my people in like Costa Rica or something. I hear it over here, hold your thought. Leeches. Maggots and leeches, two of the most common, okay? I'll be the first to tell you this. I've been trained in maggot therapy very briefly. I personally think it's one of the absolute best debriding agents, period. Period, plain and simple. The maggots are selective. They only eat the necrotic tissue. Once they're full, they kind of go into the sleep-like state. You come back in, you wash them out. I mean, you could literally take a highly sloughed wound, and within a week, you'll have some really good granular tissue.
Is that the same as like those little fish that eat your feet? Like the dead skin off your feet?
Potentially. I wouldn't necessarily call it debriding unless they do eat like necrotic tissue from a wound. But I know what you're talking about, yeah. Yeah, potentially. So the thing with maggots is this, right? Maggots carry a stigma because people, they think of maggots and they think it's disgusting, it's associated with flies. The key thing, if you were to work in a maggot therapy clinic or in a clinic that uses it, so you would never use maggots in the inpatient side. You just don't have enough time, okay? It's a very specific therapy and there's very specific requirements that the patient would have to meet first. Now, the king of maggot therapy is a physician at UC Irvine. He kind of brought it to the forefront. His novel research was on maggot therapy. So you ever want to work at UCI, go down there, he's down there, he does a lot of great work, okay? With maggots, these are all lab-grown maggots. So they're sterile, they're clean, that's the focus of education to the patient. This isn't like a guy that comes off the street who's a John Doe, and then you open a wound and there's flies popping out, right? So these sterile maggots actually cannot convert from larva into fly, okay, because they've been sterilized in that way in terms of their actual growth phases. So their job is solely to be created to debride. They just eat, okay? The other key thing with bio is with maggot therapy, you have to have a breathable dressing. You would learn about that if you got into that practice setting. Trust me when I tell you, maggots are phenomenal.
Sorry, so you would put them in here,
Physically,
all of them?
you would irrigate the wound, you would prepare the wound bed, and then you would put the maggots into the wound bed. That would be the maggots are the primary dressing. You put a secondary dressing over the wound margin, which is a breathable mesh, and then you would cover that with another breathable fabric, and then that would typically stay in place for 48 to 72 hours. So I've never treated anybody with maggots. I've been trained in maggots at national wound care conferences. Yep.
It's expensive.
So I actually don't know the cost because I've never worked in that setting. I would say it's probably expensive because it's all sterile maggots, lab grown, and it's, it takes time. The other thing about magnets that we would educate with our patients is that you're gonna expect the patient to feel something inside that wound bed if they have sensation. And the other challenging stigma is you're also gonna typically expect some maggots to get out of that wound. So like when they go to bed, and like I've got like a dressing on my leg or something like that, or on my sacrum, they go to bed, I might wake up the next day with some dead maggots in my bed. You just can't keep them all in there, okay? Maggots are great.
Do maggots